This is Nathan Fantasy Football League Updates. Nathan, Fantasy Football League Updates. Welcome back. 7 weeks are in the books. We are halfway through the fantasy football regular season, and that means it's full steam ahead. Your playoff push officially begins today, right now. We're going to see some teams make some trades, some big-time splashes, some major waiver wire pickups, anything they can do to make it to the playoffs and avoid that consolation bracket. We've got some teams heating up at the right time and, well, cooling down at the wrong time. So let's waste no more time. But before we do jump in, I mentioned trades. Well, we had a big one early on this week when Lyndon the Crow made a move with the Brooklyn Bunnies after no quarterback sat on the waiver wire, and Lyndon the Crow did not have Kyler Murray. So they were forced to make a trade, and they make a move with the Bunnies. They deal them TJ Hawkinson and Kyler Murray in exchange for Geno Smith and George Kittle. Forced your hand, but getting George Kittle out of it, not too shabby. I think that's a good move long term. And you get Geno Smith. And for the Bunnies, it gives you at least another solid quarterback option. For me, this trade it makes sense why Lyndon the Crow did it. I'm more looking from a Brooklyn Bunnies perspective. I know you're 2-5, 1-6, or 1-5 heading into the week. But it doesn't make much sense to me when you have Justin Herbert and you have Jordan Love. You're kind of set there. Yeah, Kyler Murray can add some rushing upside, something neither of those quarterbacks really have. But at the same time, I feel like you could have gotten more for George Kittle or made a deal somewhere else, maybe not to acquire Kyler Murray. That's kind of where I stand on that. Good move for Lyndon the Crow, though. They get a quarterback for the week and George Kittle on top of it. And then I guess Kyler Murray's a fine pickup, but for me, it doesn't make sense for the Bunnies roster. That's enough trade talk. Let's jump into the week, why don't we? And we'll start with the Tucson Gila Monsters and the Zestmeisters. We're back, baby. A 180-129 victory for the Tucson Gila Monsters. Back-to-back wins after starting 0-5. I said it, we're back. The offense is clicking. The most points in the league this week. What a massive game to have. My luck is turned around. This team is gelling together. It's great to see. Jalen Hurts, 24. 17 from Trevor Lawrence is great. Josh Jacobs on limited carries because of illness. Still found the end zone twice. 18 for him. Jamar Chase, I tip my cap to you, my first round pick. 38 fantasy points. Chris Olave, maybe the sleeper of the draft. 26 fantasy points. Texans defense on Monday night, chipping in 18. And Eddie Pinheiro, always excellent. 11 fantasy points from him. Really no big misses off the bench, but I am still kind of disappointed with the output from Kenneth Walker. And now Tedrow McMillan won't have Bryce Young probably next week. So I'll have to make a move at the quarterback position with Trevor Lawrence on the bye. I need to see Tet kind of shine through more as that wide receiver one. Last week was excellent. This week, not so much. Zestmeisters, well, the quarterback play looked extremely nice. Patrick Mahomes, Daniel Jones, 26 and 22. But only 20 from Amon-Ra St. Brown, and then single digits from everybody else except your defense for the Chiefs. Rough stuff there. You had a big opportunity on Monday night with Sam Laporta, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Nico Collins, all going. Unfortunately, a lot of them, except Amon-Ra, let you down there. So maybe the Zestmeisters can bounce back, but they will fall to 4-3. While the Gila Monsters are back up at 2-5. I do have to shout out the big miss on the bench, though. Would have made this thing a lot more interesting. Devonta Smith, 33 fantasy points on your bench. Let's see if we see him next week after a big miss there for the Zestmeisters, as they were the favorites in this game, but the lucky Tucson Psy coming in strong for the Gila Monsters, who back-to-back weeks, the offense has been excellent, Can they keep this up and keep forward momentum? We move on to matchup number 2. It's the Bangkok Ball and Boas taking on Linden the Crow, who made that deal earlier in the week. Didn't matter though. 164 to 111, a massive win for the Ball and Boas, who improved to 5-2. Linden the Crow under 500 now at 3-4. Disappointing stretch here for Linden the Crow, and it's probably because of the quarterback play. Justin Fields 4, might not start next week. Geno Smith 2. Ashton Genty, 4. The only bright spots were Devontae Adams with 26, Javonte Williams with 18, your defense, the Patriots defense with 20, and George Kittle, only a handful of targets, but no receptions, 0 points in his first game back from injury. Big misses off the bench, 13 from Kyle Pitts and 12 from Troy Franklin. Linden the Crow is really cooling down right now. We're going to have to see if they can bounce back. The Ball and Boas, on the other hand, 22 from Aaron Rodgers, 26 from Quinshawn Judkins, great game from him, and 20 from DeAndre Swift. Welcome back, CeeDee Lamb, 22 fantasy points, and Trey McBride, 29 fantasy points, 2 trips to the end zone. He was excellent. Big miss off the bench. Jacoby Brissett with 19. He would have been better than starting CJ Stroud, but nonetheless, a big win for the Ball and Boas, and some of the top offenses will clash next week in the Tucson Gila Monsters and the Ball and Boas. We move on, matchup number 3. The Rocky River Rough Riders and the Michigan Avengers go toe-to-toe in what probably should have been the game of the week. 168 to 161. The Rough Riders get back on track. The Michigan Avengers just devastated right now with injuries, and you can see it on the roster. The IR, Malik Neighbors done for the year, Brock Bowers, Bucky Irving, some big pieces injured for them. Really, there were 2 players that kept you in this one. Jahmyr Gibbs, who got you 36, and Bo Nix, who practically got you 40 fantasy points in that 33-point fourth quarter. Other than that, kind of disappointing across the board. Jordan Addison did get 21, and Michael Pittman did get 20. Other than that, nothing shiny to really brag about. Matt Stafford on your bench was a big miss. He would have been better than Caleb Williams. Got you the win this week. 27 for Stafford. And Zach Charbonnet continues to be a vulture and still carries from Kenneth Walker, 19 from him. On the other side, well, the Rocky River Rough Riders just kind of played consistent. 21 from Bijan, 18 from Scadaboo, 28 from Keenan Allen. Rashee Rice, welcome back. He found the end zone twice, 23 fantasy points. And the Panthers defense, 16, while your punter got you 11. Big miss off the bench is Jackson Dart. Would have really contributed to either quarterback as Baker Mayfield had a down week. But nonetheless, the Rough Riders escape with a win despite the threatening from the injured Michigan Avengers and Jahmyr Gibbs. Matchup number 4, Brooklyn Bunnies. The Empire strikes back. And in upset fashion, the Bunnies get a win. They improved to 2-5 with a 152 to 135 victory over the Empire, who were without Puka Nacua this week. For the Empire, Jaden Daniels played pretty well with 17, 21 from Jake Ferguson, and 39 from Christian McCaffrey. Everybody else, honestly, was extremely disappointing. Having Puka in this lineup would have definitely made things interesting if he was healthy. Big miss off the bench, Travis Hunter, 24 fantasy points. So the Empire kind of reeling, still first in the division in the NFC side, but down on their luck a little bit. On the other side for the Bunnies, well, you found the win column. That's what's most important, and you really did score like you were supposed to. Justin Herbert, 27. Jonathan Taylor continues to be a steal of the draft, 34 fantasy points, 3 trips to the end zone. Tyler Warren, 16, 19 from Jalen Warren. A little disappointing from your wide receivers, Justin Jefferson, Quentin Johnston, but you know those 2 will bounce back. Big miss off the bench, Ramondre Stevenson with 16 and T. Higgins with 21. But a win for the Brooklyn Bunnies. Their offense looked good. They get an upset victory. Maybe they're trending upward once again. And our final matchup, it was the game of the week. Wasn't really much of a game. The Cancun Chameleons beat the Guantanamo Bay Flying Squirrels 141 to 123. Not a ton to say about this matchup. It was really rough from the Flying Squirrels perspective. 23 from Dak, 26 from Jackson Smith and Jigba. And that's really about it to brag about. Everybody else was extremely disappointing. Really no big misses off the bench. It was just an extremely down week for the Flying Squirrels. And then the Chameleons just did their thing offensively. No Josh Allen. You thought this could be maybe a week that the Flying Squirrels sneak in, steal a win. Well, Drake May got you 23, 16 from Tucker Kraft, 15 from Ladd McConkey, who looks to be back, and that'll be strong for that lineup. Big miss off the bench, though. A.J. Brown, 28 fantasy points. Don't blame the Chameleons for benching him, though. He finally has a good game. We'll see if he gets the nod next week against the G-Men in Philly. Well, there you go. There's our Week 7 recap. Some big wins for some bottom-feeding teams, and some teams up top, well, they fall. We'll see what a bye-week filled Week 8 has in store next. All right. It's plain and simple. This is an exciting Week 8 because this starts the second half of the regular season. I think there are going to be some massive swing games all the way across the board, but most importantly, there are 6 teams on bye week, which means some teams are scrambling. Others look to be at full strength. Waiver wire is going to come in massive here, and I'm excited to see how it plays out. Forewarning, I'm going offense for some of these teams. I think some of these guys have massive weeks. Other teams, well, you'll see, not so much. We'll start right away with the Michigan Avengers taking on the Zestmeisters. The Avengers have just been rattled by injuries. I mean, they feel extremely different as a team without their top players. This is a manager who finds ways to win, and he's playing competitive fantasy football still, but kind of been a rough go of things thus far. They are currently right there at about the halfway mark. They're 3-4. They take on the Zestmeisters, who are 4-3, coming off a loss. This one, I think, does have the fun matchup title. I just don't know if we've got the players to account for that. Looking at the Michigan Avengers, I think you get a good week from your quarterback duo, Caleb Williams, Bo Nix. Nothing like last week for Bo Nix, but still pretty good week for that kid. Turning point player has to be Bucky Irving, who right now, because of all the injuries, all the bye weeks, you have to play him. He's your last running back on the roster. He's currently projected 0, which tells you kind of there's not a good chance he plays. If he plays, I think he makes an impact and can definitely swing this game. I'm just worried he might not play. So he's got to be your turning point player because that's kind of going to determine the direction this game could go. Rico Dowdle is going to now split carries with Chuba Hubbard. I think Rico Dowdle takes over that running back room. This week, though, against Buffalo, he probably struggles. Don't feel great about the receivers in Flowers and Diggs, but I do like Michael Pittman against Tennessee. And then Harold Fannin plays fine. The Zestmeisters, on the other hand, well, you got to tip their cap to the QB room. Danny Dimes, Patrick Mahomes, probably combined for close to 50 fantasy points like they have almost every other week this season. So I think they both have great performances. Nico Collins, he's dealing with a concussion. Maybe he'll come back. If he does, I think he plays well. Turning point player has to be Devonta Smith. Has a massive game last week. He gets the Giants this week. Will Philly throw the football? Will they run it more with Saquon, who's kind of been absent from that offense? The thing about Devonta Smith, which is why he's your turning point player, he is so hot and cold. He is that player where you start him, he plays horrible. You bench him, he is excellent. It is so hot and cold, and I think that's what he's going to be this week. Polarizing, you start him, not a good week. Rome Odunze, though, will bounce back to kind of wrap up how I think your players are going to do. So, in what could be a fun matchup, I am going with an 8-point spread. Give me the Zestmeisters to get it done. They get back on track, get their 5th win of the year, and are kind of in control of their own destiny for a playoff position for the first time in their career. Michigan Avengers got to really figure it out. Post-injuries, they got to try to get the ship righted. They are one of those teams on that downward spike. Now shifting over to our second matchup. The Rocky River Rough Riders take on the Guantanamo Bay Flying Squirrels. I don't know if you can call it that. The Flying Squirrels have a ridiculous amount of players and significant players on bye week. Kyron Williams, Jackson Smith and Jigva, David Montgomery, amongst a couple of others. Their lineup looks depleted this week. Dak Prescott, I'd like to highlight him, 21 fantasy points. I think That's what I think this week. James Cook, I think he has a 20-plus point performance. Other than that, Spencer Rattler is starting. Isaiah Pacheco is starting. Khalil Shakir. Moore, the wide receiver for the Commanders, is currently set to start. Who? Your turning point player is this entire roster because they all need to play out of their mind if you want to be in this contest, truthfully. On the other side, the Rocky River Rough Riders, well, they've got their running back trio, Bijan Robinson, Cam Scattaboo, turning point player Derrick Henry, who, with Lamar probably back this week, I think plays pretty well because they have to honor Lamar running the football instead of just committing to Derrick Henry. I think all three have a great week. Baker Mayfield has a bounce-back performance against the Saints. Jackson Dart plays pretty solid against the Eagles. Rashee Rice is back to wide receiver 1 in Kansas City. So I'm not going to sugarcoat it. 10-plus point spread. Give me the Rocky River Rough Riders. I mean, a depleted Flying Squirrels lineup. This is just always and was going to be a tough week for them. They didn't really hit on some of those waiver wire pickups. That team has to play out of their mind. I'm almost docketing and guaranteeing this game with confidence the Rocky River Rough Riders win in a 10-plus point spread. Matchup number 4. Sorry, Flying Squirrels. But matchup number 4, kind of similar. The Brooklyn Bunnies take on Linden the Crow. Linden the Crow, without a lot of their quarterbacks, they've had to double waiver wire dip and go Tyrod Taylor and Andy Dalton, who will both be starting, and I both think have poor performances. Javonte Williams seems like the star of the week. Other than that, you're starting Troy Franklin, Josh Downs, Kyle Pitts, Chuba Hubbard, Chase Brown. I think your defense, the Patriots defense, and possibly your kicker and Boswell have a chance to outscore a ton of your offensive players. The entire team is a turning point week for Linden the Crow. For the Brooklyn Bunnies, whoa, we are halfway through the season. I got to get that down. I think they have an awesome week from Jonathan Taylor, who continues to just find the end zone, and there's no doubt he will against Tennessee. Turning point player has to be Saquon Barkley. When do they get this guy involved? You traded for him. You gave up great pieces that I think you're not 2-5 if you don't give up Smith and Jigba and Kyron, but here we are. You've got Saquon Barkley, who's not been doing great. I think he steps it up against the Giants. Justin Jefferson, I think, has a bounce-back week against a Chargers secondary that I still have some skepticism about. Quentin Johnston, again, is pretty excellent. And then how about Tyler Warren? He's been a great tight end for you. He continues to push forward. That begs the question, why'd you pick up Gaston in free agency, the Chargers tight end? You don't need him. You know who does? The Gila Monsters. Why'd you do it? Why'd you do it, bunnies? Anywho, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I don't think anybody's going to fault me for this. 10-plus point spread. Honestly, 15-point spread. Bunnies destroy Linden the Crow. I don't think anybody's going to fault me this week. This seems like a clear-cut week for me to not pick Linden the Crow, who I've not taken all year. But this one, more than anything, feels like, yeah, the Bunnies are going to roll over Linden the Crow. A gimme victory for the Bunnies, who I think are starting to heat up roster-wise and figure things out. Linden the Crow is on a down spiral, a freezing cold slide. We'll see if maybe they can get it together with some players off bye weeks and maybe quarterbacks healthy again. We'll see, but this team for Linden the Crow this week could score the lowest amount of fantasy points we've seen in a game with a full starting lineup, not including the punter bowl. We'll find out, though. Sorry, not sorry, Linden the Crow. Matchup number 4. Honestly, this could be considered the game of the week. The Tucson Gila Monsters, who have won 2 straight. Offense has looked so much better than it has all season. They take on the Bangkok Ballenboas, who are getting some players back. Now, the reason this could heavily be considered is these two teams are pretty much unaffected by bye weeks. They seem and appear, for the most part, to be at full strength, but they're not going to be my game of the week because I think we might have a better matchup. Not too sure, but this one, just about as good as your game of the week. We've got 2 excellent games. I think between the Gila Monsters, the Ballenboas, we're in store for a good one. I think we'll start with the Gila Monsters, who the offense has looked excellent. The expectation is, with the lucky Tucson tie, that remains that way. Jalen Hurts, massive game against the Giants. Kind of a revenge game from 2 weeks ago when they went there and lost on the road. in New York. I think they get their bounce back. Joe Flacco's got to start this week with the Bryce Young injury. That's why I couldn't pick up Gaston, because I needed a quarterback. Well, Joe Flacco, I'm hoping to pair him with Jamar Chase. I think against the Jets, both of them have massive weeks. 20 plus for Jamar Chase. For Flacco, he just benefits from the touchdowns. He looks so much better at the helm of that Bengals offense. Love that pickup for me. Josh Jacobs, hopefully is off that illness, back to full touches. He has a good game against Pittsburgh. My turning point player, no Kenneth Walker, who honestly has been rough because his touchdowns get poached by Zach Charbonnet, which is so dumb. He gets the work all the way down there. They get in the 5, and Charbonnet just gets the free touchdown. It's so dumb. But don't have to worry about that anger this week. We've got Kamani Vidal, who will play on Thursday night, the starting running back currently for the Chargers. I think he plays fine. Nothing flashy. Nothing like his first career start with the Chargers. He went for 20 plus. I think he plays fine. Nothing crazy, though. Chris Olave continues to play excellent. As Rattlers kind of figured out, he's the guy I have to throw the football to. Ingram, it's National Tight Ends Day on Saturday. I think I finally get out of tight end purgatory because I don't have Gaston, so I'll have to deal with Evan Ingram. He plays pretty well on National Tight End Day. Tet, I think, struggles with Andy Dalton throwing him the football, unless Andy really likes him, but I think he struggles this week. For the ball and Boas, we'll start right away with your turning point player. Lamar Jackson is supposed to be healthy. If healthy, think he has a big week. But also there's the opportunity and chance against the Bears that he's not 100% and doesn't play up to that 20-plus point potential. So that could hurt the ball and Boas in that sense. I think, though, Lamar Jackson, back to full health off a bye, feels good and is ready to go. He has a 20-plus point week against the rough Bears defense. I think both your running backs, Swift and Judkins, continue the momentum they've kind of grabbed and continue to trend upward. And then, because you're playing me, it just feels like top scorer of the week in CD Lamb is just written. I know Pat Surtain is going to be following him around. PS2 is probably one of the best corners in the league. I still think the Cowboys will scheme stuff up. Dak will throw CD the ball. CD will have a monster game, maybe 30-plus fantasy points. Emeka Ibuka has a monster game against the horrible Saints defense. And then the rest of your team kind of just plays serviceable. But with the lucky Tucson Scion, which has gotten me weeks in back-to-back weeks and great offensive performances. 2-point spread, though, still going with the ball and Boas. You get your two biggest pieces back in Jackson and Lamb. I think you're on the trend upward. The Gila Monsters offense continues to produce. There's just going to be a week where you meet a team that just scores a little bit more, and that's going to be the ball and Boas. So might snap my 2-game win streak, but I think there's still some positive momentum to be had for the Gila Monsters moving forward after this week. And who knows, maybe the Tucson Tie continues strong and gets me to 3 straight wins. All right. We've talked about it enough. The game of the week, I think this one has the makings for the best head-to-head matchup. It's the Cancun Chameleons taking on the Empire Strikes Back. The top 2 teams in each division. Unfortunately, no Puka Nacua this week. A couple other buys put the Empire not at full strength, but I still think this one's going to be a good one. We'll start with that Empire team. Jaden Daniels has a big week against Mahomes and the Chiefs on Monday night. CMC does CMC things. He's the number 1 running back and probably the number 1 player in fantasy right now for a reason. 25-plus fantasy points this week. Turning point player, there are some other options, but I'm going with Breece Hall. Since like week 1, 3, and 4, he has kind of been absent from a horrible Jets offense. They need to get him going. If the passing attack isn't going to work, you've got to run the football, and I'm surprised Breece Hall hasn't benefited more from how bad the Jets are. I need to see him show a little bit more life for sure. Your wide receiver core is a mess this week. Jalen Waddle, don't feel great about him. Chris Godwin was out last week. You got to hope he's healthy. You don't have much options left. I don't think he plays great. And then Xavier Worthy, don't think he plays great either. Terrence Ferguson, though, pretty good tight end. He has a great week. He's a top 3 tight end right now in fantasy. Pretty good week for him. On the other side of things, the Cancun Chameleons, well, welcome back Josh Allen, have a monster game against the Carolina Panthers. Drake May is a good top 10 quarterback. He plays well. Achane gets back on track. Turning point player has to be Rachaad White because if Bucky Irving comes back, his fantasy value drops. He doesn't play as well. But if we lean on the side of he plays the Saints, big week for him. So it kind of teeters on the Bucky Irving health, I should say. Drake London, A.J. Brown. I think A.J. Brown really has started to figure it out. I think Jalen Hurts is going to give him the football more this week against New York. Big game for him. Drake London plays well. George Pickens suffers from CeeDee Lamb's big game. He plays so-so. But in a 4-point spread between the top two teams in the league, despite some buys, I'm still taking the Cancun Chameleons. That offense is just so potent, so awesome. Got to go with the Cancun Chameleons. That is a team built to win a championship. They have a monster week against the Empire. So that'll do it for myself this week. We are through, or will be through, 8 weeks when we come back next week. So stick with us. Playoff race is just heating up. Let me know in the comments who's trending up, who's trending down. Who do you want to see make some big moves to try to make a playoff push here towards the tail end of the season? And of course, we've got our Halloween episode coming up next time. So we'll have a special guest joining us next week as we predict our week 9 matchups and get y'all caught up on this week. So until next time, we will see you again real soon here on the Nathan Sports Talks channel.